Green Lantern issue 1, Jeffrey Thorne writing with Dexter Soy and Marco Santucci on the art, which is a little bit cruel to Santucci that at a certain point, because Santucci's not a bad artist, but when I've been looking at Dexter Soy and then I switch to Santucci, it doesn't do Santucci favors, and I think that's a problem that, But this is an exercise book. There was no backup though. This is much like Flash last week. This is just an oversized first issue. I don't know if this continues to be $5 with extra pages or a backup, or if it goes down to $4. I've not checked, but Flash does though, because Flash started at $5 and is going down to regular size.
Well, let me just say, I was a little bit worried about Jeffrey Thorne, just from comments about Hal, and Hal's not my favorite Lantern, but over the course of the Johns run, he became endeared to me. If this issue does, I know I complain about issues being too expensive because we're reading so much. I would make an exception for this if this keeps the quality. If I'm keeping the page count, I will pay $5 for this every month. That's how much I enjoyed this.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
I feel like there's a swerve coming.
Oh, you think I'm going to oppose? You think I'm going to tell you that I hated this?
Maybe. That's the way you said interesting. Makes me a little bit worried.
No, the interesting one there was more about just after all the talking about books possibly going to $5 as a standard, and just immediately you're like, oh, if this keeps up the quality, I'm down for this, baby. Yeah. I'm more saying interesting that your hypocrisy than anything else.
Well, of course. But again, it has to keep the pages. The pages can't go down.
Sure. I am just checking. Issue 2 is still $5, but it still has 40 pages listed. So it's okay. But whether or not that has a backup or it's just longer, I don't know. But either way, is still keeping the page count.
I might get what I asked for, and I might be upset by it. So we'll see.
Yeah. No, I think there's a lot of potential in this. I do think it has some rough edges. I do think that it has that problem that some comic books do, where I find them spending too many bubbles and words, ultimately just either either regurgitating or just basically saying nothing until the point's eventually made.
Right.
So a little bit of that. But I do like the status quo this sets up. I like that this is kind of falling into the United Planet stuff, and Oa trying to keep everyone together. The idea that Oa is not the center of the universe anymore, and how does that change things? I do like the cliffhanger, which we'll get to in a little bit. And obviously I like the we have to sort of deal with the Teen Lantern with Kelly, and sort of okay, where does her glove come from? How do we train her? Do we stop her from doing stuff? All that sort of thing. I like that side of things.
Yeah. So I went on this Twitter, I wouldn't say a rant, but there's a thread that, for a long time, Johnson's Green Lantern was my favorite thing in comics. So much so that I kind of worked the Green Lantern oath into my wedding vows, which you should have seen my wife's face. She was like, don't do this. And then I was able to pull it out. But yeah.
Notably not quite your wife yet when you did that. And there was a chance that she might not have been your wife, depending on how badly it went down.
The only person outside of her that picked up on it was her uncle, which he said he was kind of hoping that I would stick it just to see what would happen. So shout to Uncle Brian on that one. But so Green Lantern for a long time was very, very dear to my heart. And then kind of New 52 happened, and I'd lost interest. And Rebirth, we had Green Lanterns and Hal and Pals, and while they weren't up at the same, they were close, and I enjoyed those runs for different reasons. I've had Green Lantern not in my life for a while now, because the Grant Morrison, Liam Sharp series. So I was jonesing for Green Lantern at this point. And here you want it to become its own thing. I don't want them playing with the emotional spectrum, because I feel like in Rebirth and in New 52, there's a little bit too much of that. So the fact here that Thorne and Soy and Santucci are deciding to do a whole new status quo with the Green Lanterns, and what that means for the universe and the United Planets, but it doesn't just get rid of it. It'd be easy just to throw it out, but it's playing with it in that there's more to the emotional spectrum than we've seen, right? Like there's hints here that those are just pieces of something bigger, and there's other, like, this will probably annoy you because of Star Wars, right? But like something that Fallen Order did real nicely was that it went like there's different kinds of Force users out there. It's not just the Jedi and the Sith. There's other people that can play around with it.
Mike. Thank you, Mike. You saved me from stupid Star Wars comparisons.
No, I'm still going. But Thorn does that here in the story, where there's people that use the emotional spectrum in a completely different way, right? Than what we've seen with the Green Lanterns or the Sinestros and all of them. And I think that's super interesting. And the fact that they're asking questions about the Starheart, which ties back to Alan Scott, it has everything about Green Lantern that I love in one spot. So,
to actually go through it then and see what actually goes down here. So there's a tease at the start of a big fight happening. John and Baz are in combat, and then a Thanagarian warrior comes in, who they clearly have been talking to. A bit of hostility, and then we cut back. We cut back to 2 hours previously, and this is okay. We're going to get to why this fight's happening. And I was a little bit worried for those couple of pages, because what I complained about that Future State issue was just that it was just nothing but fighting for like a whole issue, and like I feel like nothing happened. Luckily here, being an actual issue, the first issue in particular of a run, is that it's like no, we're going to set up a status quo. We're going to establish where all the characters are. And John is kind of the head of the Corps right now. Hal's off elsewhere. He's on a call here at the start. But I think what's interesting about this is it didn't even occurred to me that John was wearing a Kryptonian-esque outfit until he mentioned it later on, and like, oh no, I'm wearing a Kryptonian version of like the Green Lantern outfit because Superman and Superboy started this United Planets, and I'm honoring their their thing. And then I was like, oh, that's kind of neat.
I thought, I was like, what is he wearing? Like, this is weird. Is this some new Owen garb or? And then when like you said, it all clicked. And then you see the other members when they get to the inner council, they're wearing like full on almost Superman capes around them. Like, I thought it was real cool.
So there's a big meeting happening on Oa, which it becomes clear as it goes on. Later on, it's made it explicitly clear that at first you might think this is a debate about something else, but ultimately this is just the United Planets deciding whether or not Oa even gets let in. Which is kind of an interesting idea in the first place, that Oa may not be allowed into it. But we have we're introduced to the Thanagarian Amira, who's part of the brigade, the United Planets Brigade, who's kind of there as security, even though they mention later on there's literally like thousands of Green Lanterns
right
here. But so there's a little bit of bit of dick measuring, as it were, between her and the Lanterns.
If only there was a Thanagarian Green Lantern that we've been introduced to, years and years ago, to set her at odds. You know what I mean? With, I think that would be cool.
Are you critiquing here?
Not so much critiquing. I get where she's coming from about like, oh, the Green Lanterns. No one asked you to be the police force, so why do you assume that the United Planets are just going to automatically, admit you? We can handle things on our own. But like, I feel like, and I don't even know if they're canon anymore, but you have the two, the Iranian, you had Vathsard from the Green Lanterns, and then Isamat Cole, who is a Thanagarian Green Lantern. Like, I just wish that conversation had happened with the Thanagarian one with Isamat kind of present, because this is someone that's been representing Thanagar as well. So you could kind of see the, like, I want her to be more justified, like she hasn't seen them do good, right? Just personalize it a little bit. But other than that, I mean, that's just it's a small thing.
Yeah, Hal gives an update on where the other Lanterns, because he's on Earth with the Justice League. Jessica is went to Sector 0123, and then Raynor's dealing with something at the border of the Vega system. So it kind of sets up where the other Lanterns are. I do hope there's a planned second book to give these other Lanterns something to do. That would be nice.
Yeah.
But
give us something like Urban Legends, but with Green Lantern, and we could rotate. Um,
Yeah. They mentioned Mogo shifted to the other side of the sun for now.
yeah.
So not right next to Oa as it has been the last couple of
Mhm.
times we've seen it. So yeah, and that's basically Hal's inclusion for the issue. Is that his hologram, his Green Lantern communication goes away, and then we jump to Kelly, and Kelly's basically throwing a fit and demanding to not be touched by the Guardians. And when Johnny comes in to find out, what was going on, and Baz is like, no, everything was going fine until they asked for the glove, and she's refusing to take it off because she doesn't trust them. And the Guardians want to dismantle it. They want to look into it because they confirm it's not any of the things that it could have been. It's not this, it's not that. And yeah, it's super interesting stuff.
It's similar to Corona's Gauntlet, but it's not Corona's Gauntlet.
Yeah, they confirm that. They confirm that it's not that. They still have that in the cell. Yeah.
Right, in the vault. So they are definitely concerned about who built this and why is it able to tap into the green power battery.
Yeah.
Basically.
Although, I'm pretty sure they also have a line where they say it's not actually tapping into their power battery.
That's right.
Yeah.
They thought that it was, but it's almost self-sufficient.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure bothers them. Right, because we all know the Guardians are all about control. So...
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some speculation here about, okay, we have these new central planets and all that stuff, but, I mean, she did show up with this glove before Infinite Frontier and before the end of Death Metal, so, this is obviously a mystery the book's going to explore and maybe answer. I wonder if there is an answer. I wonder if Bendis had an idea for this that he's passed on to Thorne. Or is this something that Thorne has just been left to fix himself?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
I mean, if that's the case, cool. Because I do like Kelly as a character. The fact that they keep calling her a teen, but they keep arguing she's 11 or 12. So she doesn't want to be Kid Lantern. She's Teen Lantern. I thought that was a fun little runner.
Yeah, they keep calling her Kid Lantern, and she keeps correcting them, we see her interacting with other aliens, and she's not scared, which the alien kind of thinks is a little bit funny. Baz gets some... It looks like a corn dog, but he says it tastes like chicken wings. Which...
Sign me up!
Aliens, I guess. Alien stuff. Okay. And then we're introduced to sort of the more antagonistic characters here. Well, this is one of the things that I think... The book is a bit longer, and I do think you feel the length a little bit, because it is doing quite a lot in this first issue. But it introduces to these... this group of aliens who I'm not familiar with. I don't know if these are pulled from anywhere or if they're a new entity.
Yeah, let me look. Because they're as a long-term Lantern reader, they seem new to me. Yeah. But they could be, from decades ago, for all I know.
Yeah, they basically are very, shall we say, confrontational with the Lantern way and the emotional spectrum and everything else, and they kind of form a protest which turns into the big fight because they basically have this... It turns out to be this orb or energy that reacts to willpower, because ultimately the Lanterns win the fight by John realizing this and telling everyone to stand down and depower, and it just kind of shrinks and goes away. But whilst they're all fighting, it's all these big giant tentacles of light, and it's hitting things and all that. Probably the more interesting part of the issue. I mean, obviously it's interesting that we have this potential antagonist and some of the politics that are going to go on, but I think perhaps some of the more interesting stuff is some of the brief glimpses we get of the various alien delegates speaking as to whether or not their worlds accept Oa into the United Planets. The representative from Kolu talks about all the things that the Guardians have done, the Green Lanterns have done, and they do accept. And perhaps the more exciting one is the Sinestro Corps for New Kurigar, I should say, where they basically say no. And what I thought was really interesting about this is the way they talk about the Guardians being basically full of fear, which you think Sinestro and the Yellow Lantern Corps would be all about, but they're like, no, they're scared, and everything they've done is out of fear. They're right. They're cowards, and Kurigar denies. So ultimately, they do get voted in, but it is kind of notable that the one sort of glimpse of Sinestro we get in this book really. I mean, I think you see his face later on in a quick shot.
He's back to being antagonistic towards the GLs.
Yeah, but not in like a super villain kind of way. This is this is very much more Black Adam, like representing his country kind of
style. You know, for the longest time there's been a truce, right, between Sinestro and back in Hal and Pals, they were working together, and that's why you had Arkillo and Guy being able to team up on adventures, you know. So the fact here that they're back to being on almost opposite sides, and you have this whole delegation of the Sinestros.
I don't necessarily think that this puts them back to being, because I mean, keep in mind they're still a part of the United Planets after this. Like, you know, the Sinestro Corps and New Kurigar are still a part of that.
Right, Kurigar is deemed that the Sinestro Corps represent them, because I'm sure he's still, you know, I don't know what the story is now, that if Sornik is still the leader of New Kurigar. I mean,
maybe they will go full villain. I'm not saying they won't, but what I'm saying is I don't think that this means that he is going villain again or full villain again.
Oh no, not full villain, but like you said it with Black Adam. I'm just saying, like, for a while he's like, oh, we can work with the Green Lanterns, and this, it seems like maybe he's not as much not trusting the Green Lanterns as much as the Guardians, which is par for the course, you know, for Sinestro. You know, I was trying to find that group of aliens, but I don't think they're given a name. The name that we get is the name of the weapon that feeds off of the emotions, which is, you know, another one of the Guardians' secret weapons that has backfired, you know.
Yeah, we do have a citizen shows up, and he doesn't have much to tell us, but he does mention that before the Manhunters, the Guardians created the Atma Tantrum. Atma Tantrum.
Atma Tantrum. You gotta add a glottal stop with that apostrophe.
I know.
It's like Hawaiian.
Screw you writers for making this hard to say. But talks about the source of peace. They feared the power and disorder of the spectrum, the emotional spectrum specifically. But it does bring this idea in that there's other spectrums and there's other things that they're going to be introducing here on the run. And the idea we have these beings who are kind of against the emotional spectrum, or at least the use of it in the way that you know, the Guardians do and the Lanterns use it. It's interesting. But yeah, so, you know, John realizes that this all about is this thing's feeding off willpower. He figures that out from Citizen, and they all depower, and the leader of this little alien group, the sort of ice-looking princess one, she kind of gets really upset. But she does talk about the Starheart. She says the Starheart must be free, which is interesting, which, you know, we're going to get to this idea. We're finally going to like properly kind of take where the Alan Scott power comes from. Is that going to connect in some way to Kelly's power, perhaps? And is it going to be some sort of different force that we're going to play with now in Green Lantern mythos in a more bigger way than it ever really has? I don't know, but it's interesting. Unless the name Starheart's just a little Easter egg and it's not actually going to connect to that at all, which is entirely possible.
I mean, if you know about the Starheart, you know that is the Guardians try to condense magic into one spot. And, you know, it ended up landing on Earth, and that's what gives Alan Scott his power. That's what he carved. It's a piece of the Starheart. You know, so if these people who seem to be magic, they know about Gem World, right? So if they're holding this up as like a that's what I'm looking for. Not a holy icon, but, you know, it's a relic to them, you know, and how they view the spectrum and whatnot. Like, again, comparing it to the Force in Star Wars, you know, it's just how they interact with it. I think that's really cool, because then it ties, again, all the mythos together.
Yeah, they want to free the Starheart to the point that when, at the end of the book, when Oa is accepted, and you've got the two Guardians and a few Green Lanterns behind them on this little, you know, levitating platform, there is an assassin who yells, "Free the heart," and then assassinates one of the Guardians. And we end on this kind of shock thing, and it says next issue, funeral for a Guardian. So that's our big cliffhanger. I actually really like the cliffhanger. I really like the things that are raised in this book. I dig where it seems to be going. I dig the potential of it. I do think as an issue on its own to read, it is a little bit ploddy at times in the middle. There's maybe a little bit too much dialogue. It can maybe flow a little bit better. So I think the comic kind of technical artistry, if you will, is a little rough around the edges. The actual premise and where the story seems to want to go, I'm definitely into. I definitely want to read more. Like I'm in
Yeah.
for issue 2. So I'm not as in love with it as you are, but I do wonder how much of
Yeah.
your like desperate need to want a Green Lantern book is affecting your
No, because
love
I
here.
went in with the arms folded, like impress me, and they did. You know, like, and this is what I was looking for. So I've been quiet because I was searching for. I couldn't remember the page, but it's when John realizes that the source of peace, so he has to stand down. They talk about the emotional spectrum, and the Citizen says he's never been comfortable with that description. Love is a spectrum, rage is a spectrum, fear is, but life, death, no, they're really not. But greed, compassion, hope, what are they? They're all a result of choice of will. So it's almost as if saying like the green was the very first, and they've branched off from there.
Mm-hmm.
So again, that's taking the emotional spectrum idea and adding to it. And what does that mean going forward with you have these? And I found out the aliens are from Sorcerer World, which I think is where the guy from Legion comes from. I'm drawing a name on his blank. I'm drawing a, jeez, I'm drawing a blank on his name. I'm pretty sure he's from there, and one of the Legionnaires is from there too. So it's seeding all this stuff there with magic and the Star Heart, and but the whole idea that the spectrum is a spectrum of spectrums is something that I can get behind.
I think what's interesting to me here is the idea that they want to free the Starheart, and the idea that they think that the Lanterns and the Guardians specifically, maybe more so, have kind of caged something that they think should be free, that they worship either like a cult or even greater than that, like a full-on religious entity. That is a very interesting prospect, and if it does lead to, sort of bringing in Alan Scott in a weird way. I mean, maybe it doesn't even need to. Like, it can be related to that without ever needing to like reference him, really. But
okay, so they're from it's actually Planet Xerox, which is kind of funny, but it's Xerox with a Z, not an X, at the front. But it is basically the touch point of all magic. So it touches Gem World, the Fifth Dimension, Mira, Skataris, Hell, Land of the Nightshades, the Dreaming, Azarath, Limbo, the Red, the Gray, the Green, and Mordru. That was the guy I was trying to think of. That's where he's from.
okay.
So adding that on top of it, we're definitely getting a more cosmic Green Lantern. I feel that's not just the space opera-y of the Johns era. It's actually, cosmic DC. With, like you said, you point out there's the Kaluans, Thanagarians, all these aliens of different worlds coming together. And now you have these guys, which, I mean, you hear all those names, and how now with magic that we usually aren't getting magic with Green Lantern, right? Those are two worlds that are vastly different.
Yeah, so that's an interesting new concept that they've not done in a while. And I do hope, though, that, because a lot of the things you just said to me there are all kind of interesting, I do hope the book itself actually gets across some of these ideas a bit more as the issues go on, and it kind of explains where they come from. I mean, it's one thing for us to have some fun and sort of go hunting for the connections, but some of this actually might be super important to the story. So, very, very neat. So, yeah, I mean, it started off an assassination, so it paints them as these, devout believers in what they're doing. So that gives you a sense of, they're not a group of jokers, they're not a group of whatever, they're more like a magic League of Assassins in a weird way, where they're devout. So that's interesting.
And he reminds me from Aaron's run, you had the Light Elves. This guy, the way
I should rephrase that. Alien magic League of Assassins.
There you go. But no, they remind me of the Light Elves from Aaron's Thor run, way back.
Oh, sure, yeah.
With the way that he fires his bow, and and it's yellow, right? And this is when it hits the Guardian. Like, that's not Ganthet, right? Because the lady Guardian's like, oh, my brother, he's dead. So, yeah, pretty big moment. Also, Sinestro's face looking pretty self-satisfied there at the bottom.
Yeah. I mean, Sinestro's face isn't even necessarily say happy. It just sort of feels like, well,
yeah,
saw that coming. kind of thing.
But yeah, no, I really enjoyed this issue a whole lot, just for what it did. You know, I wasn't expecting to like it as much as I did, and if it can keep this pace, then I'm gonna have a new favorite book to talk about every month. You know, which I did expect. You know, going into this.
Do you think Connor hates it?
I don't know. It seems to be more his, like, he might think that there's too much going on. You know, he might call it a little Bendisy. But I don't know.
Just a thought. All right, what are you rating Green Lantern issue 1?
I'm giving this a 9.
Whoa! I am going to
gate.
give this a solid 7 out of 10. I see a lot of potential, but there's definitely some rough edges to deal with. So, but I'm hoping this will be a run that I'll get into. I didn't even mention the art that much beyond just the art change.
Yeah.
It's very house style. Even Dexter Soy stuff is a little more house style than normal for him, I think.
Yeah. I don't know. It feels chaotic when it needs to, but it never feels like it's overwhelming in the art.
I think part of the problem is that with Green Lantern, and this is a common problem with Green Lantern a lot of the times, is that there's so many characters to draw, especially in an issue like this where you've got this conclave of all these people standing around, and then you've got all the fights with, like, you know, tons and tons of characters all zooming around and stuff. And I think that maybe does present an obstacle that I don't know if this book necessarily overcomes, in the sense that, you know, this is not, like, the Dexter Soy pages are not the best Dexter Soy art I've seen by a long shot. Like, if you go read his Outsider stuff that he did just recently, that stuff is phenomenal looking. But still not bad though. It's not like an eyesore or anything like that.
No.